continue on with these shorter videos for those of you that don't want to listen to me for 3 hours or look at my website. But I'm going to make these videos because, yeah, I need to stop. I could make a 3-hour-long video. Instead, I'm just making a bunch of short ones. All I'm doing is going through all the evidence that's on my website. And this is really all the things. I was able to find a lot of newspapers, as you'll see in my last video. I'm going to re-click on a few of these, possibly. Or not, but yeah, I've gone through the contributors several times. I'm just going to quote what is interesting. There's a photo engraving appears. You can just read this here. This is from 1885. This is in response to the Deseret News in July, stating that Carter has copied a daguerreotype of Joseph Smith, a portrait. But if you read through the details, it's like, yeah, that looks really close to him, is what people who were alive when Joseph Smith was alive, his best friends, some of them are still alive, closest associates, apostles. They're saying, that looks close. If there's a photo of him, they wouldn't be saying that, you know? Just, they know. But Junius F. Wells is like, whoa, like some of these 20-year-olds that don't know anything are saying, that's a photo of Joseph Smith, because it looks, you know, it's 1885. Even in 1891, people are thinking, oh, it's a photo of the man, it's just distorted, or, you know, my heart goes out to them. I just don't agree with that at all. And everything above that I've just talked about in the last video, that Joseph Smith III said that he was selling photos of the painting of his father when he was 36 by an artist from New York who also painted his uncle Hiram Smith. That's David Rogers. That's why Joseph Smith Papers, the first book of his journals, thumb through it into the introduction pages. It says David Rogers who did this painting, because there's just too much evidence pointing to him. And Junius F. Wells says it was David Rogers and that he talked to Emma Smith. So, and he's not an idiot. He's talking directly to the prophet at the time. The church wasn't that big. He's working with the first presidency a couple of decades later, securing church history sites and Sharon, Vermont. That's who Junius F. Wells, if you want to research him a little bit farther. But these are the important things that I find interesting. He's talking about, they say, our engraving, our daguerreotype. So William P. McCall distorts this. And so you might think Dan Welgelin also saw the daguerreotype, but they're explaining he's just copying a photo of the painting, is what is concluded here. You could be totally negative, Nancy, and say, that's all there was a painting and only a daguerreotype of the painting. I just don't agree. People who've read all these things and work in the history department are split. You go one way, they go the other. That's just how it is. Just some of them kind of got loud when I started working with people, and I think people found out, and that was kind of like, oh, not fun. But the loudest people are the angry people, kind of like, you know, there are things that are going on in the world right now. So, but when you're angry, you're not always super rational. So, you know, I spend time to read everything. But I mean, you could still just have your opinion, but whatever. Anyway, they're talking about Carter. And so there's an engraving that is done by Dan Welgelin, and it's from a pen ink drawing. He's doing a lot of landscape and things is what they're mentioning. The conspicuous feature of the engraving is the portrait of Joseph Smith. Purports to be a daguerreotype taken from life. So basically Dan Welgelin's looking at Carter's photographs, daguerreotypes, supposedly of Joseph Smith. But so far as we've been able to discover by diligent inquiry, no such portrait was ever taken. We were fully satisfied ourselves. The original daguerreotype was the same in Mrs. Toolidge's still engraving. The latter purported to be taken from the oil painting of Joseph Smith. So it's been 6 years that Joseph Smith III has been selling photos of what he says is the painting of his father that I explained again. His dad was 36, turned 37, end of 1842. Couldn't have been 1843. They keep saying 1843. He himself is just confused, clearly. I think his dad being 36 is more accurate, because he says he's from New York. It wasn't William Major who painted it. I explained that last video, because William Major is not from New York. He's from England. And he wasn't there till, like, he bypassed Nauvoo. You know, like, when did he talk to Joseph III? Like, never. Okay. Emma always kept in her room, refused in her life to have copied engraving of natural massive hair, simpering to hate the expression, quite revolting. Looks like he's simpering, I guess. Engraving was once condemned and is met with little favor among the coins of the prophet. The painting from which it was made has a history, and talk about David Rogers. That's where David Rogers gets attributed to the forward-facing painting, which it all matches up and makes sense. And almost despaired of getting a good portrait and all. You can go into all these details anyway, but our engraving is from a drawing of the daguerreotype. Okay, the daguerreotype is of the painting, of the painting. Oh, with some slight changes of expression and original handling of the hair is originally taken from the oil painting. So they've changed the expression. And while that was not a very good likeness of the prophet, it nevertheless was the only front view of him that was taken during his lifetime. And there are a lot of really good artists in Utah at this point, you know, I think better than Rogers. So they're starting to realize, that's not even that good of a painting. And Mr. C.W. Carter, and just to be honest, like if you go to BYU or just study the church, like art's a huge thing. It's a huge, dancing, music, it's always been. Like if you ever think that we, Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, is against singing and dancing, that's not our religion. Brigham was like, this is great because it's a joy. But it really was a focus, and they got, I mean, at this point, people are able to settle down and spend the time to become good artists, you know? Anyway, made some very fine photographs from the daguerreotype and had them touched up and finished Gonzalez that they're explaining is a photo of the painting. Okay. Carter touched up a daguerreotype of the painting. I'm not going to go into too much more. But yeah, here's the Joseph Smith papers, as I keep stating, by David Rogers. It says that in their printed publication book that they published, courtesy of the Community of Christ. And there's that painting. I'm going to go into some other points, like where did William Major come up here? Has to do with this ring. This is his right hand. People can get their right and lefts mixed up. Like I know someone who's like in her 60s, smart person, gets right and left mixed up. Let's just start there. I'll try to keep this a shorter video. I'm quoting the journal again because I did that twice on my website. But there's also another profile painting. Unknown. They say some people think it was Sutcliffe Maudsley, and other people think it was David Rogers. William B. McCarl concludes that this for sure is David Rogers. And so this is the churcheschrist.org, Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints official website. I don't know why they're doubting this. I have no answer. Because this was owned by Brigham Young, and he said it was David Rogers. I think it's highly possible he did a profile in a front, and then you see how this is cracked and things like that. So any photos I've seen of the forward-facing painting, I think one evidence that it was completely painted over, like there are no cracks here, and it had been stored. Maybe a little bit there, but just the quality of this, I think they just painted over every single detail with a really good artist, but they didn't create a whole new painting, as William B. McCarl decides to claim. And William B. McCarl decides, oh, well, this is for sure done by David Rogers. I think he thinks Major. And I conclude here and explain he didn't have access at BYU. Relations between the RLDS Church, no internet, and just it was expensive. It's just multi-million-dollar project. It's the Joseph Smith papers, trying to get all these papers, it's hard. It's been probably expensive and hard for the RLDS Church. It's online now, you know, a lot of their Saints Herald. I don't know if they necessarily did that, but it is. Someone found a copy of the Saints Herald and found all the copies and scanned them. They didn't have that in 1960, and the BYU and the Community of Christ, at the time it was the RLDS Church, I don't think they had good enough relations to have archives from the organized Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints. That was very small. It's still small, but it was small back in the 1960s. They're Missouri. They all pretty much all moved and ended up in Missouri, and now they have members all across the world. I'm not an expert on them, but anyway, there's the profile painting. They think was done in 1842. But again, Lucien Foster. It was after the fact because he came into town. A visit from Lucian Foster, who gave him a gold pencil case. And there were earlier, 2 days earlier, he came from New York. But there's no other mention that he was hanging out, or he was just living in New York, learning how to do daguerreotypes. So April 1844, Joseph Smith dies late June. So there's time, and all it takes is a few seconds. So people being critical of Lucian Foster having any time to photograph Joseph Smith doesn't make as much or any at all sense that he had no time. He's in his office, and he's a part of his presidential committee. Joseph Smith III, hesitancy. He says, I think, every time he talks about 1843. He's like, oh, I'm kind of confused. He might get his left and right confused. This just really, anyway, Carter's touched up version is right here. We'll kind of get into that. We're talking about Carter here. But Wells, this is the picture that matches that. This is, so if you're getting confused and thinking, where's the quote there? And Dan Wagelin, there you go. Here's where they show that. I was just trying to show this to you. Dan Wagelin is the one that copied this from the daguerreotype that they say is of the painting. This matches the painting very well. The eyes are not as close together. You will see that, but the nose is really far. So you put it next to the death mask. The nose is like up to there, where the nose ends on the death mask. And as I've said, my theory about the painting is he's depressed. What they said, I think his chin's gonna be down. Like if you're downtrodden, your head's down. And when your chin's down, that's when the nose is gonna line up lower and off. And they probably got him to laugh and get his chin up, and then maybe got the rest of the face. So that's why it doesn't really look like his chin's down. But I think he might have. I think that's how. I don't think he's actually an awful painter, but I think that's how some things got really off. There's the Saints Herald. And then just like why do I think Joseph Smith III just took a photograph of that painting? This is how dark that I can't put on my website because I don't feel like going through permissions to put Emma Smith's 1845 daguerreotype that they believe is by Lucian Foster, because there's pretty much only Lucian Foster mentioned until, the Saints left around town. There were some other people, I think someone in Iowa, I don't know. It looks this dark though. Okay, and so I don't know how quickly they darkened. I mean, I know here we are in 2021, but in 2019 her daguerreotype was that dark. But it had been copied in the 1860s, as I'll talk about later here, and that one is very clear. But they obviously took the glass off for Emma's, and I think that's my theory here. So this is flipped, this is inverted. This is how dark. If they tried to copy it back then, it was like getting if anytime you copied it, as Colin Weaver said, it was going to up the contrast even more. Like there'd be nothing left to sell. Like it's not. Could this letter I've been looking for, he says, could this copy well to Janie Robinson? I don't know. He already knows his mom's cartridge of Z. Daguerreotype copied well once. But I don't think it could copy again. And I think someone else got my cartridge of Z is my theory. Anyway, we'll go into the ring in the next one. I have a whole video about that, but we're going to end this here because that's a whole other can of worms. Like, why William Major? Okay.